Hey guys, welcome to this free lesson on applying vibrato to string bends. Now this is something that I come across quite a lot in my teaching. It tends to cause people quite a lot of issues. For me, the way that I deal with this with my pupils tends to be sort of twofold. So the initial thing that I'll work on with people, which we're going to talk about in a moment, is learning to develop a feel for the tension involved in actually performing a string bend. Most people will use their ears to tell them when they need to stop pushing the string, which is fine up until a certain point, but the moment you want to try something like applying vibrato to that, then it gets a little bit more complicated at that point. And then the second issue tends to be with regards to how you actually apply the vibrato and how you think about it. So let's look at the tension thing. As I said, most people when string bending will take a let's say bending the 10th fret on the B string, okay? Now the note that we're aiming for is the 12th fret on the B string, okay? So we do this, okay? And generally what tends to happen is you will listen to the note on its way up and you'll get to a point where you allow your ear to tell you, I need to stop pushing now, that note is correct, that's where I want to be. Now as I said, that's totally fine. But the moment you want to do something slightly more difficult with it, then it becomes a problem. So what we need to do is develop a feel for how much we need to actually push this string rather than relying entirely on our ears. So the best way to do that is just to simply take, so like if we say take the same bend again. So we're going to take that bend, we're going to play the 12th fret, which is the note that we're aiming for, before we actually do the bend. Have a good listen to the note, come back to the 10th fret, and then you're going to bend the string before you actually pick the note. So you're going to bend to whereabouts you think it is, then you're going to pick the string, and hopefully I'm near as damn it at that point. Now you might find if you've not done this before, you might be way over, you might be way under. Don't worry about that, that's absolutely fine and it's perfectly normal as well. This does take quite a bit of time to develop. So try that, just various points around the neck, and also try it with half-tone bends as well. So for example, if I take the 8th fret on the B string and I'm going to try and bend the 7th fret to match, like that, okay? So as I said, you bend and then pick and then hope that you're somewhere in the vicinity. Now this will change with different guitars, different string gauges and things like that, so you're just looking to develop a relatively accurate feel for this. Okay, now we're going to actually look at the vibrato side of things. And we're going to start by looking at what happens when we apply vibrato to a note on a string that isn't bent. So let's take the 5th fret on the 3rd string, for example. If I play that note and apply some vibrato, what we're actually doing there is we are physically bending the string in small amounts, up and down, up and down. However, what tends to get past people sometimes that you may not have realised, the note never actually goes below its pitch. You only ever go above the pitch and return to it, like that. Now when you try and do this, when you try and apply vibrato to a note that is on a bent string, this is much more difficult to do, and what you may do, what some people do, is try and apply the same physical action to a bent string. Now the problem with that is we can go below the pitch on a bent string. So immediately our vibrato becomes twice as large and much harder to control, much harder to hear the underlying pitch in it as well. So this is why it's important to develop that tension. So you can do that, it can be done. So if I take the 10th fret again, for some reason I like this bend today, so let's keep working with that. Let's go up to the pitch. Now if I apply vibrato that moves above and below, it can be done and you can still track that pitch, it's not a problem, but it is very difficult to do. So let's instead try this. Bend your note up to the pitch and then practice, and again the key word here is very slowly, just pushing that note above the pitch and returning to it. Above and return, like this. Now you might want to apply some drive or some gain to give you a bit more sustain when doing this. Just so that you can have a bit more time working on that, because it does develop it does take a little bit of time to develop. Apologies. So try a bunch of that, see how that goes, and what that should leave you with, hopefully at the end of this, is a much more stable sounding bend. Because as I said, doing the bend that goes below the pitch as well can sound cool, but it's very difficult to track. And another thing that people get caught out with on that as well is not really taking into account all of the tension that's coming through the strings, pushing back down through your fingers. So if you rise above that pitch a certain amount, you may come down what you think is a certain amount, but you may actually just come a little bit further due to that tension. Come up the same amount, and then you'll go further again, come up the same amount, and you end up with this very comical sounding sort of trail off on the end of the bend, something like this, which is quite funny, but again, certainly not what we're going for. So do a bunch of that, see how that goes, and then as I said, your bends hopefully at that point should be a lot more stable. You should be able to do that relatively comfortably after a while, whether it's a full tone bend or a half tone bend. So yeah, try a bunch of that stuff and hopefully that helps. Okay guys, I hope that helps. I hope it's been of some use to some of you. Any questions or issues with this at all, feel free to get in touch. That's absolutely fine. There are multiple ways to get in touch with me. If not, keep practicing. Good luck with everything, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.